Ben 10 was originally pitched in 60 seconds. That's right, Ben 10 exists because of a pitch that was done in a minute. Which maybe makes it all the more impressive that somehow, I think the show has managed to do something that so few shows have done. I can literally only think of one other show off the top of my head. And even still, I think that the original Ben 10 series, Classic Ben 10, is maybe the best example of how to build a superhero from nothing. Better yet, how to build an original hero and show the right way. And it all comes down to one very simple thing. Oh, and toys. Maybe the only example where that's not a negative word for being a big part of a show's existence. However, it started a little weirdly.
And our next contestant is... Ben Tennyson!
I wasn't kidding. When Ben 10 was first pitched, it was one of 20 ideas that were each pitched for just a single minute by Man of Action, a group of comic book vets who had written on Spider-Man, Deadpool, X-Men. Yeah, they had experience. A show about a red-headed boy who would use his Mega What to transform into things like Plant Guy. Ben 10, as you can probably tell, was almost very different. Those were all original pitch ideas, but Cartoon Network picked up the show anyway after 3 years of work on the concept. And then, Ben 10 would build a formula that I haven't seen replicated since. It starts, ironically, by being the opposite of Spider-Man.
You heard the one about great power coming with great responsibility?
Actually, not just Spider-Man. A lot of comic heroes are defined by their reality and their mission often reduced to it, their identity. Spider-Man has responsibility, Superman is defined by his morality, Reed Richards by logic, and so on. Ben 10 starts by building a hero that is the exact opposite. Ben isn't defined by a single identity at all, which could be a disaster, by the way. It could spiral the show out of control because instead, he's kind of defined by variety. There's always the, how would Spider-Man solve this problem? Or how would Batman in prep time? You know the conversations, but Ben is a show about a hero who solved every problem by deciding what kind of hero he should be that day, which makes the show and Ben as a hero significantly easier to attach yourself to. Ben ends up feeling very human as a hero because one, he is, but two, the way he approaches each day is the same way that you do. His mood, his personal problems, his family, it all changes the literal kind of hero he chooses to be in the moment. And this directly manifests itself in the aliens and the Omnitrix. Batman is always Batman, just like Spidey is always Spidey, so their problems and lives dictate the kind of Batman they'll be that day and the kind of Spidey. Ben instead is deciding if he'll be Batman or if he'll be Spider-Man, so to speak. Which, by the way, perfectly expresses the shifting feeling of identity you have growing up, and the feeling and confusion of who you are day to day at that age, or honestly, really any age. This leaves more room for growth. That's gonna be important. And this only works because when Ben is just Ben and not using the Omnitrix, he continues to be a representation of the reality of youth. He's a great character. When building a superhero, you don't want what's under the cape to be perfect. Ben is really not. But that's not what matters. What Man of Action did with Ben is not typically what you do with superheroes. Peter has Uncle Ben here, for instance, partially to allow his guilt to help fuel him. Clark, meanwhile, is built on restraint, for instance. Ben is cocky and immature and impulsive, and that's what makes him great. He's the perfect personality to give something like the Omnitrix to. What would a kid actually do with all this power? And then Ben does that. He shows off, he fails, he messes up constantly, he goes for cool instead of taking the smarter path. The same thing you or I would probably do. So you've built a hero where growth actually isn't the assumed outcome, and sometimes neither is success. That's great writing, no matter the medium. In the very first episode, Ben nearly takes out an entire forest and all the life in it, and for a good portion of it, he thinks it's cool.
Oh yeah.
Ben, as a protag, shows his audience that growing up and being the best you is ugly and messy and alien. But also that you can literally be what you want to be every day. You have a choice. And that particular messaging being done well is really rare in media. But none of this is what makes Ben particularly super. No, instead it's a thing that probably got the show greenlit. You know what probably excited Cartoon Network about the Ben 10 pitch? 10 different action figures, a clothing accessory that everyone watching the show would want, toys.
You have the power to create your own Omnitrix with the new Omnitrix Creator.
Yet, I think the toyetic design of the show actually made it better It's probably the only time I'll ever say that, by the way. But first I want to talk about the Omnitrix just for context. I truly believe that this little weird green device is almost the perfect power system. It does 3 things that make Ben work as a hero really, really well. 1, it's a built-in limiter that helps, at least for a while, solve the OP hero problem. It has time limits, there's a random element to it, it might just misfire, so Ben's never really in full control of his powers, which, by the way, is also why something like Venom works. Ben has to work with his power like a partnership, symbiotically. 2, it gives everything built-in stakes. Fights have more tension because the Omnitrix might spit out the wrong alien, or he might time out. Most heroes don't have that battle with their powers that gives fights that tension. It's not always necessary for every hero, but it works here. In 3, it kinda gamifies narrative. So the show always runs on strategy and trial and error. It feels like a video game loadout system or puzzle solving. That's a really unique element. So the Omnitrix creates a superhero narrative that's not just grounded in limitations, but makes it feel like you could probably use it better, which is also unique. Your personality would change how these fights go. That's what all great superpowers do, but I'd argue the Omnitrix does this even better than a lot of very popular heroes. This always keeps the emphasis on Ben's personality, on his growth, by becoming an organic part of Ben's personality, the good and the bad. And this is the same way you as a viewer would see the Omnitrix as well. How you grow, how you see these things would change how you use it. Growth is front and center. But the toys.
Get ready to use your Ben 10 alien power.
Is the Omnitrix a sick toy? Absolutely. But the entire show obviously exists due to it being highly mergeable. Toyetic, by the way, is a real term that dates back to Star Wars that is used to describe a franchise or media's suitability for merchandising or toys. So something toyetically designed is something that is designed, at least in part, with merchandising in mind, which is probably part of the reason we get such distinct aliens. Clear and singular in their powers, mostly, easily identifiable, easily action figured, which I will point out could in some ways lead to later complaints of samey aliens. But for most of classic Ben 10 as a result, you get very memorable characters, animation design that makes the action readable. It's the same philosophy that went into TMNT or Power Rangers. So if Ben 10 was picked up by Cartoon Network in part to sell toys, for once, it's probably not a negative. It might have helped drive the philosophy that makes these aliens so distinct, that makes the Omnitrix so cool. That toyeticness, again, is layered right into the story logic. And that finally brings me to what I think is the most overlooked part of building a new hero. The structure you put them in. Ben Tennyson exists in a show that at its start had a pretty unique narrative premise. Road Trip Monster of the Week. Ben grew as a hero each episode in a new setting, new threats, new opportunities to be a new Ben. The road trip idea grounded Ben in an environment that facilitates maturing. Seeing more of the world, expanding your horizons, which sounds cliche, but ironically, very few heroes leave their metropolis or Gotham or New York all that frequently. And this works in tandem with allowing Ben's own powers to change how he sees the world episode to episode. Not in one way, by the way, but in a new way for almost every alien, which doesn't just keep Ben growing, it keeps the show fresh because we essentially get kind of new little subgenres each episode. Heat Blast, we get classic elemental super narrative. XLR8, we get speedster stories. Ghost Freak, we dip into horror. So Ben 10 can keep one character, Ben Tennyson, the Omnitrix, and still be sci-fi, horror, comedy. So what Ben 10 does ultimately is put its hero in a narrative position where when it does finally decide to world build, to serialize a bit, to mature, it's because the character has experienced so much, gone so many places, seen so many things, been so many things, that the growth is natural, required almost, true, organic storytelling, instead of what a lot of shows and hero stories do, which is lean too hard, too fast into serializing or growing its hero up by manufacturing what I sometimes call maturity events. You can, just like growing up in real life, miss the changes happening to Ben because heroes, just like people, are changed by the world just as much as it's changed by them. And that takes time. Ben is a shining example of growing your character by making it clear that they should be growing instead of just telling the audience they have. That's Ben 10's superpower. And if it sounds so simple, it's because on the surface it is, but yet so few shows get it right like Ben 10.
This is gonna be the worst vacation ever. I might as well have gone to summer school.
Ben 10 is so interesting because today, depending on when you started watching it, it could be a totally different show than what comes to mind when someone else hears the word Omnitrix. And to its credit, it has evolved and in some ways regressed over time. To this day, it is still, though, a beacon to an extent of what a show built around an incredibly simple idea can become. Ben 10, through the Omnitrix, through its protagonist, through its narrative foundation, through its treatment of identity, is a really interesting example of modern original superhero building, of how to grow your character, and how important it is to do so in a way your audience can understand, participate in, and connect with, can grow with, and doing it all the right way. Classic Ben 10 still works, and more shows and superheroes could probably stand to learn from Benjamin Kirby Tennyson.
Trust me, you're gonna want to go Ben. Thanks for making me realize that.
That is it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this one, press the like button down below. And I do want to hear from you guys, what is your favorite show airing right now? And as always, if you haven't yet done so, hit subscribe and press that little bell. That little bell just makes sure you're actually notified when something comes to the channel. It helps a lot. So hit that bell. And as always, this has been